Okay. I don't know why it didn't say recording in progress, but okay. So, all right. So I'm so happy to be here with Tina and everybody else that's joined us. And, the intention today was to bring Noel Latore, nurse practitioner, functional medicine practitioner, on to talk all things hormones and other women's health issues. And I just wanted to introduce her. She's amazing, and I send everybody to her. So if you haven't heard her about her yet, you're going to learn a little bit more. So, Noelle, thank you for coming and spending time with me. And I really wanted to have this recording also to share with people because I'm always talking about you.
Oh, great.
So tell us about you, tell us what you do, and maybe because I mentioned functional medicine, maybe just some people might not know what functional medicine means. So maybe you can touch upon that a little bit too.
Sure. Sure. So, hello, everybody. I'm Noelle, Noelle Latore. I'm a nurse practitioner with about, I guess we're on 26 years experience. Got my undergraduate degree from Rutgers University and my master's from UPenn. Started off with in the OBGYN world, obstetrics and gynecology. And I worked really in women's health most of my career. And then probably about 15 years ago, maybe even more than that, I started doing a lot of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and started looking into alternative medicine and alternative ways to help my patients because I felt like I sometimes would hit a dead end with traditional medicine, and I felt like I wasn't really getting my patients the answers they needed, and I wasn't able to help my patients as well. Once I started incorporating different supplements and different dietary changes and started looking at some integrative approaches, I was able to get my patients feeling a little bit better. And then that kind of led me down a couple of different paths, actually, because of my own medical issues and kind of searching for answers. And then also for my patients when I was, hitting a dead end and feeling like I wasn't getting anywhere, I felt that I needed to find more answers. So over the years, I've worked with a couple of integrative practices. I've worked with a Lyme literate doctor for a bunch of years, and I have gone back to school with the A4M, and I did some functional medicine, like a fellowship course, so multiple courses in functional medicine. I'll explain what that means. And I've taken some courses in hormones and hormone replacement, as well as Lyme. I've gone to multiple ILADS conferences, attending the Forum for Integrative Medicine, ICI, it's called, which is environmental illnesses. So let's see, functional medicine. So functional medicine is really trying to get to the root cause of illness. It's understanding what's going on in somebody's body that underlies a particular problem. So in, traditional medicine, we're usually looking for a diagnosis and then a medication or a treatment, right? So we get the diagnosis, we treat them with a medication, we get the diagnosis, we treat them with a medication. And sometimes that works, and there's a lot of, wonderful things that we have in mainstream medicine, but sometimes we kind of have to dig a little bit deeper and find out what's going on underneath, or else we're never going to get rid of the problem. We're never going to kind of resolve the issue. Sometimes there are medications that people need to be on in their lives, and that's okay. But there's, also a lot of things we can do with natural medicine that can help people. So when it comes to functional medicine, we do testing. A lot of things I do basic blood work, but I go a little bit deeper with the blood work. So sometimes I'll do a little bit more expansive cardiometabolic profiles. So looking at cholesterol panels, but looking a little bit more deeply. I'll look at full thyroid panel, so not just looking for TSH, which a lot of times in medicine and medical school, a lot of people learn that, diagnosing hypothyroidism has to do with the TSH being abnormal, and they'll sometimes look at a T4, and then that's it. There's a lot more to thyroid than looking at the TSH and T4. And if we don't look a little bit more deeply, we're going to miss things. And so when I'm doing a thyroid panel, I look at TSH, I look at T3, T4, I look at free T3, free T4, and I do reverse T3 and then thyroid antibodies. because a lot of times there's something going on with the thyroid that might not be obvious with the TSH, because the TSH isn't actually telling us what the thyroid is doing. It's actually telling us what the pituitary is doing. So our brain is telling our thyroid that we need to produce more. And that's what's happening when the TSH is elevated. Usually a TSH is elevated when there's hypothyroidism. And then sometimes we're looking and seeing that somebody doesn't have enough T3 or T4. Looking at thyroid antibodies tells us if somebody has an autoimmune thyroid condition. People may know of Hashimoto's, Graves' disease. And so when we look at some of these markers, we can tell that something's going on inside the body that's affecting the thyroid. We can probably dive in and talk about thyroid for an hour too, but I do find a lot of hypothyroidism. And in OBGYN, hypothyroidism is actually tied to a lot of different things. And I was told by in a couple of different places that I shouldn't be treating the thyroid, that I was a gynecologist. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. If our thyroid's not functioning properly, we can have irregular periods. We can have amenorrhea. So amenorrhea is no periods. Irregular periods are very common. And we can have so many other symptoms, and sometimes there's an overlap in the hypothyroid symptoms and some of the hormone symptoms. So when people come in and they have, weight gain, hair loss, night sweats, irritability, dry skin, constipation, all of these are symptoms of hypothyroidism. And, sometimes as practitioners and providers, we have to be listening to the patient and listening to the symptoms and using those things to help us to diagnose something rather than just looking at the numbers. So if I just looked at a TSH, a lot of people have a normal TSH. Sometimes we're going to catch a hypothyroidism when they have a high TSH, really high TSH. But if we don't look at the other things, we're going to miss a lot of hypothyroidism. We're going to miss a lot of thyroid disorders. And so, that information is huge. And I also always do a thyroid exam on my GYN patients. And now that I'm in functional, I try to be checking people's thyroids as well. Because sometimes we're going to find an enlargement or nodules or something that somebody needs to get followed up with. As far as hormones, I always look at the thyroid, and then we kind of, depending on what's going on with women, people will come in, men too, but people will come in and they'll start telling me their symptoms. Our hormones, when they're not balanced, are going to cause us to have a lot of different symptoms. Someone who's normal, who has a normally balanced hormonal, picture, is going to feel good, right? They're going to feel good. They're going to have normal periods. They're going to not have breast tenderness. They're going to not have heavy, painful periods. They're going to not have PMS. They're going to not have endometriosis. And, PMS, PMDD, postpartum depression, all have to do with hormonal imbalance. Fibrocystic breasts, painful breasts, irregular, heavy, painful periods. So all of these things have to do with hormonal imbalance. So we have our estrogen, we have progesterone, we have testosterone, right? Those are our main sex hormones for a female. We're usually talking about estrogen and progesterone. Testosterone is hugely important too. That usually peaks when we're in our 20s and then starts to decline. When we have a testosterone deficiency, sometimes we can have libido issues. We can have an inability to kind of put on good muscle mass, or sometimes we can have fatigue. When we have a testosterone excess, that can kind of sometimes go along with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is very common, a disorder we sometimes find in women as well. And that will also, there's a whole grouping of symptoms that goes along with polycystic ovarian syndrome. A lot of times people have, not always, but people will have irregular periods. They'll have weight gain. They'll have sometimes acne and hair growth, sometimes painful periods, and sometimes amenorrhea. So sometimes the periods will go away. Sometimes they'll be irregular. When we see someone with PCOS, there's a whole bunch of blood work that we do for that. Sometimes that also goes along with insulin resistance, right? So our blood sugar is not balanced well, and our body can't deal with the carbohydrates and sugars that we eat well. And so that will kind of be in that picture of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So there's a lot of things we can do with someone with PCOS to help them to bring their androgens down. The androgens are like the testosterone male hormones. There's a few others. And then balance the other hormones, because sometimes we need to get them back into balance so they'll get normal periods, maybe so the acne will go away, so the hair growth will stop. Then we look at other things like estrogen dominance, right? So some people have good levels of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, but they have too much estrogen or not enough progesterone. So we can look at estrogen dominance a couple different ways. Sometimes we have too much estrogen. There's reasons why we can have too much estrogen. Sometimes we have estrogen or xenoestrogens, which are estrogens that come from chemicals, right? So sometimes when we're using the BPA that's in plastic bottles, phthalates that are in, some chemicals that are in skincare products. There's a lot of things that will falsely elevate somebody's estrogen. And that will also, sometimes estrogen detox will play in, meaning our bodies break down our hormones and remove them from our bodies. And if our body's not doing that properly, we can have an overload of those estrogens in our body, which will lead to high estrogen symptoms. So that would be breast tenderness, that would be heavy, painful periods, sometimes some mood issues, moodiness, inability to lose weight, sometimes issues with cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones, and sometimes insulin resistance, which is not dealing well with our sugars. And then we think about progesterone, and sometimes we have an estrogen dominance looking picture because we have progesterone deficiency. So progesterone, estrogen is our growth hormone. It grows our breasts. It grows the lining of our uterus right before we're getting a period. And it's also our, it's kind of a little bit of a mood stabilizer in some respects. It's what helps us. It helps us to produce serotonin, which is one of the neurotransmitters. It's responsible for having a lifted mood. So sometimes when people don't have enough estrogen, they'll be depressed. And sometimes if they have it too much, they might be a little irritable. When it comes to progesterone, it opposes the estrogen, right? So estrogen is probably the main one, and progesterone is the balancer. And so progesterone, when it's stable, will help our uterine lining stay stable, right? It's going to be preparing us for pregnancy. And it also has a lot to do with mood stabilization, and it has a lot to do with how our periods are. So if we have a deficiency in progesterone, we're potentially going to have a short cycle, or we'll have, which will be a luteal phase defect. Some people have heard of that term. Sometimes we have a shortened cycle and people will get their period too soon. Sometimes people will have a lot of mood issues. Anxiety is big when progesterone is too low, or estrogen dominance, right? So if we have not enough progesterone or too much estrogen, those are reasons why it will feel a little imbalanced. So anxiety is a big one. This can be happening when we're young and when we're having PMS symptoms and we're in our 20s and 30s. And it's extremely common when we're in perimenopause and menopause, where we don't have enough progesterone to match the estrogen, which at perimenopause time is kind of on a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Sometimes it's a little bit, what we say, unopposed. It's got a lot, there's a lot going on with our estrogen, and our progesterone is just not high enough. So we sometimes will have sleep issues when that happens. We don't sleep well, we're having insomnia, we're having too much anxiety, and it doesn't balance things out well. So sometimes we can do things to help people to get their progesterone up a little bit. And there are some what we call adaptogens that we give. Chase Tree or Vitex is one that I give people when their progesterone's a little bit too low. And there's things that we can give if somebody's estrogen's too high to bring it down, like DIM is one that we commonly give. And then just looking at what's going on in this person's body, like what's going on with your diet, what's going on with your stress levels, what's going on with a lot of different things, because sometimes when our cortisol, and that's one of our main stress hormones, when our cortisol is too high, what's happening is our body is stealing the hormone that progesterone's made from and making cortisol. And so when we're making too much cortisol, we don't have enough in the tank to make the progesterone that we also need. And so that's why sometimes, helping people with their cortisol levels and stress response is going to help them to bring that progesterone up to where it needs to be. So PMS and PMDD, there's a lot going on there. Sometimes it has to do with estrogen dominance, sometimes progesterone deficiency, sometimes adrenal issues can play a role, sometimes thyroid can play a role. Endometriosis is commonly related to this estrogen dominance, progesterone deficiency. Ovarian cysts can be related to hormonal imbalances as well. So those are some biggies. what do we do treatment wise is, you know,
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would, it sounds like a lot of the symptoms of hormone imbalance is why people come to me, say, I can't lose weight, I have anxiety, I can't sleep, and that's probably the biggest complaints. What do you say
yeah,
for your client?
yeah. So
Like what is diet? I mean, so you also help people, and part of your protocols always entail nutrition and recommendations for stress management.
yeah. So say we have somebody who comes in, I mean, you know, I saw it a little bit more on the OBGYN side because we only have 10, 15 minutes. You know, people will come in and you hear all their diagnoses and all the medications they're on. And there's a lot of people on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And or they come in with GI complaints or they say they have constipation. And, you know, a lot of times we're not even looking at all the details. We're just, you know, people are just saying, oh, here's an anti-anxiety med, or here's a, you know, here's a medication to help you go to the bathroom, right? So, you know, I guess the first thing that I always talk about is what are you eating, right? So let's just talk about what you're eating, right? If we're not eating healthy foods, we're not going to feel healthy. We're not going to feel good. So if we're not eating good, we're not going to feel good, right? So if we're putting a bunch of garbage into our body, that's also going to clog things up, right? Our body, a little bit too much alcohol will affect our liver. Um, our hormones are processed through our liver. And so when we're overloading our liver with either toxins from our environment, toxins from our, you know, maybe contaminated water, contaminated air, um, too many plastics. Mold is another thing that's a huge thing that I deal with. When we get too many toxins in our body gets overloaded and can't even work on, you know, properly balancing and removing these things. So sometimes when I have someone who has an anxiety issue, I will look at some things like, for sure, I'm going to look at their thyroid. Usually there's going to be a few more symptoms. They're going to say, I'm not sleeping well, I'm a little bit irritable, my hair is falling out, I can't lose weight. You know, all these things are going to be coming up. And I never settle for the, oh, you're just getting older, or, oh, it's just because you have kids, or, oh, it's just because, you know, I don't like that
Like
answer.
a lot of people say like they go to the doctor and it's like, well, you're getting older, you're in your 50s. Of course this is going to happen. You're in menopause. Or yeah, you're stressed out because you're working and you have young kids. So it's like almost normalized. And I think a lot of these symptoms are so common and people have confused it with being normal.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, these things are common as we get older. And but there are answers, right? So if somebody is having anxiety and constipation and is not sleeping well, and all those things I just said, like hair loss, night sweats, waking, you know, I want to look at a panel of blood work and or other labs, right? So I'll look at, you know, the thyroid, I'll look at all the sex hormones that we just spoke about. Sometimes depending on, you know, sometimes it can be as basic as doing that. But other times we'll dive a little bit deeper and we'll do other testing like you know, I didn't even talk about a lot of the other things we do with functional medicine. We didn't get there, but sometimes I'll do a gut health test. Sometimes I'll do it, which is looking at the stool and seeing what's going on in there. And do we have any overgrowth of organisms? And are there ways that we can help you to kind of work on that? Because a lot of times when there's something going on inside, we
Mhm.
have to kind of bring that back
You have to
to
correct that.
balance before their mood is going to change. The other things we're going to do, we're going to look at like these hormones and thyroid, and sometimes I'll look at a Dutch test. A Dutch test is looking at dried urine. So we do multiple samples throughout the day. We look at the person's hormones before they go to bed, and then when they wake up in the morning, and a few times during the day. And that will tell us what's going on with the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It'll tell us what's going on with the cortisol. So that's our main stress hormone. It'll tell us what's going on with melatonin. It will also look at how we detoxify our hormones because a lot of people have questions because they might have a family history of a breast cancer in their family. They might have concerns about that. If they have an estrogen dominance picture, I might find that they're not detoxing their estrogen well. So it's not so much always that they have too much, it's that they're not processing it, right? So that Dutch test is really helpful for a lot of things. Looking at cortisol imbalances is huge. Sometimes the story isn't just about their hormones and their thyroid. Sometimes it's about cortisol and our stress response. Um, and when we look at those levels of someone's cortisol throughout the day, some people feel wired and tired. Some people feel like they have so much energy, like the Energizer Bunny, but they can't ever settle down. Some people have like moments in the day that they have energy, and then other times in the day that just they feel exhausted and they feel like they need to take a nap or they need to take a break or a cup of coffee or whatever that is. And sometimes when we look at these adrenal panels, when we look at these cortisol panels, we're going to see the picture of what that person just described. We're going to see high cortisol in the morning because I feel like I have so much energy in the morning. And then we're going to see if they say I have a dip in the afternoon and I feel like I need to take a nap. Usually we're going to have that on that picture. Sometimes depends on the day, depends on
What
the story.
would you do for somebody? I mean, because this sounds like a lot of people. I just did my Dutch test. I'm excited to get the results. But like, what's your recommendations? And I know it's all individual. Like, it's
Yeah.
not get
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
any
mean, there's a lot of
recommendation.
things. So,
But like, what do you
yeah.
recommend
So
to
what do we do,
somebody?
right? When it comes to adrenals, first we examine what's going on in your life, right? Meaning what's going on? What stressors do you have, right? Sometimes we have way too many stressors and we might need to kind of take a few things off the plate.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's about how we process our stress, because sometimes it's not that we have more stress than someone else, it's how our body handles it. So sometimes I'll go in and give someone adaptogens to help bring their progesterone up, because that's going to help with the stress response. Sometimes I'm going to give people progesterone. So it depends on the person, depends on the age, and depends on what's going on. Other things like magnesium, vitamin C, those are going to support the adrenal glands. And then sometimes we give specific adaptogens for the adrenal glands. So when somebody has, kind of like an imbalance all over the place with their cortisol, we're going to give just some general adaptogens. They're called adaptogens. They're herbs that help support the adrenal glands function, and some other vitamins. Sometimes it's B vitamins, B complex, like I said, vitamin C, magnesium. We're going to give things that are going to support those adrenal glands so that they're functioning normally. Some people have high cortisol, and sometimes we're going to give things to bring the cortisol down. Sometimes there's some supplements we'll give at night
Mhm.
or during the day to kind of help bring people's cortisol back into balance. And then we talk about things like deep breathing and meditation and, working on our autonomic nervous system. So there's a lot of things that's a whole other, we can probably have a whole talk on that. But when we're not balanced, there's things that we can do to teach our nervous system how to calm itself down. And so there's a lot more to that. It's not just about the cortisol. It's about how can we control the fact that cortisol is going up high, right? Um, so there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. From a hormone perspective, going back to that, obviously, if people have a hypothyroidism, sometimes I'm going to look at some other things, some vitamins and minerals that the thyroid needs in order to function properly. So the thyroid needs magnesium, zinc, copper, selenium, iodine.
Right.
And we're going to look at some of these minerals. I know Sheila does a lot of testing with HTMA, which is a hair tissue mineral analysis, which is a great test. There are other ways to look. The hair is one way to look. Then we can look in the blood and we can look in the serum. There's different ways to look where it's going to give us a little bit of a fuller picture if we have a couple different ways that we're looking. Um, for thyroid, I just started doing a lot more iodine testing. I want to say, I think it's at least one third of the population is iodine deficient. We no longer have the same iodine in our soil that we used to, depending on where people live. Sometimes there's huge iodine deficiencies. So I started testing a lot more iodine, and starting to supplement people with iodine. Our thyroid, T3 and T4, the thyroid
Requires the
hormones
iodine.
are made of iodine. So T3 is three iodine molecules and T4 is four iodine molecules.
Without iodine, it's not going to work very
So
well.
without iodine, it's not working. And so it's a little controversial looking at iodine, but if we look a couple different ways, and meaning, some people are very afraid of iodine,
Yeah.
because nobody wants to overdo iodine. But it's hard to do that, and there are some things, where people get concerned about iodine, but then we're all walking around iodine deficient because everybody's afraid of the iodine. So we're looking at different ways to look at iodine. I sometimes will do a 24-hour urine iodine after a loading dose to see how much someone's excreting and how much they're holding on to, and that will help us determine how much iodine somebody needs, because without iodine, their thyroid is not going to work. And then looking at some of the other things like magnesium and zinc and selenium and copper, we want to make sure that they're balanced properly and not overdone. We want to make sure that the person doesn't have deficiencies, because when they do, they're going to have all sorts of things, not just their thyroid not working, but magnesium is probably one of the most common supplements I give if somebody tells me they have constipation. It's usually the most common I say to take if they have PMS, cramps, anxiety, sleep issues, right? So there's a lot of different things we'll put in there. And then we give hormones. So, not everybody needs to be on hormones. It depends on what's going on, and not everybody wants to. But when I have a progesterone deficiency, and if I've already tried to give some of these adaptogens and some of these vitamins and minerals, I'll give somebody progesterone. So sometimes even infertility can be related to having low progesterone, or a luteal phase defect, which is that short cycle, or sometimes an elongated cycle if we don't have the right amounts. So sometimes giving somebody a little bit of progesterone in the second half of their cycle can be helpful to raise that progesterone, but also working on other things to get that estrogen to go down to kind of meet it, so that it doesn't become, we can do things to kind of pull that estrogen down instead of just giving the estrogen, instead of just giving the progesterone. But giving progesterone can be life-changing for some people. And then adrenals, giving adrenal support. Some people, even, I know I'm going back to adrenals again, but hugely important. Even when some people's adrenals are even flatlined and they don't have any cortisol. So sometimes we need to give them back, even sometimes adrenal gland, or things that are going to really kind of bring that up. Then, when we're in perimenopause, a lot of times it's testosterone and progesterone we're going to want to give. Testosterone has started to drop in the 20s to 30s. And so giving back testosterone can be helpful. People can feel like their mood is lifted. They can feel a little bit more strength, a little bit more self-confidence, able to build more muscle mass. That when it comes to progesterone, the reason I give that in perimenopause is because their estrogen is on a roller coaster ride. And I don't usually give too much estrogen in perimenopause. A lot of times I'll wait until somebody's in menopause. There are some times that I'll give the estrogen, but sometimes it can cause an erratic moodiness if I give too much estrogen, because if they're still on that roller coaster and they're still getting periods, they have estrogen. So we know it's there, but sometimes it's about that balance. There's a couple other hormones. I mean, there's DHEA, there's pregnenolone. These are all related to our adrenal glands, and when we don't have enough of those, sometimes it's gonna, affect the others as well. So sometimes I will give DHEA and pregnenolone depending on the person's age or what's going on. DHEA oftentimes is low when somebody has a lot of fatigue, or if their adrenals aren't working properly. But all these hormones make each other, right? So DHEA is related to testosterone and estrogen. And our pregnenolone is also one of the main hormones, the precursor hormones. So is DHEA. And without the DHEA and the pregnenolone, we can't make the other ones. So sometimes we kind of put them back in and give them those types of things.
Well, it sounds like the balancing is key. Like it's not just, okay, like if somebody needs a hormone or a mineral or a vitamin, it's about balancing them because you can't, they all work together.
Mhm. Yeah,
And I was thinking when you were saying about cortisol, like I'm sure some people like aren't happy to hear we're so programmed or trained in conventional medicine that when we, like you said in the beginning, you go to the practitioner and you express your symptoms, and then they have a solution with usually a pharmaceutical, which sometimes can help in the immediate moment, but it's not correcting the problem. So sometimes people don't want to hear about all the work they need to do, and we don't want to make changes, but it's necessary. And I know
yeah,
you teach your patients. I talk to my clients and I send them to you, and and we're telling the same story. Like, well, some things have to change before they change.
yeah,
You're moving in the right direction, like, because ultimately the goal is to feel great and have vitality and enjoy your life, like enjoy your relationships, enjoy your career, enjoy your everyday, because if you're in balance like that, it's like a miserable place to be, you know?
yeah.
And so when people come to you, let's say, I come to you and I'm having suffering with hot flashes, maybe I don't sleep well, I definitely have some anxiety, and I'm really struggling with losing 20 pounds. Like, you would just sit down with me and go over everything, like just walk me through what that looks like and maybe what you would test, and then
Sure.
know what to expect.
So before I start with a patient, I usually send them a questionnaire. It's pretty detailed, it's pretty long. I want to know your story, right? So I have people give them a little bit more of their story and let me know what's been going on, what kinds of symptoms have they been having, when did these symptoms start, how were their periods when they were having periods, how are their periods if they are having them still. Um, I want to know those things. And then we'll go with like usually a basic, not for me, it's really not basic, a robust lab panel sometimes. And we're going to find a little bit out there, right? So if I find some vitamin deficiencies, if I find the thyroid is off, if I find the hormones are imbalanced, sometimes we need to do these hormone blood panels on certain days of the cycle. So sometimes on day 3, 4, or day 21, because if we don't look at the hormones on the right day of the cycle, we're not really knowing what kind of picture we're getting. Because, you know, another time, if we want to talk a little bit more about hormones, we'll bring up, the menstrual cycle and what it looks like, but there's some ups and downs there. And so if we don't look at the hormones at the right time, we're not really getting a good picture. So then if somebody, then if we do more testing, so it depends on what the person wants to do, we'll do the lab tests. If someone wants to do a Dutch test, and if someone wants to do any other kind of testing, like a stool test, which is going to look at, the gut, or sometimes toxin testing, which is going to look at potentially mycotoxins, which are related to mold, environmental toxins, which are related to a lot of things, pesticides, some of these things that are in our skincare products, things that are in our water supply, heavy metals. So all these things are things that we can look at. So I see someone for the first visit, it's 90 minutes. I'm going to review the information that they filled out on their questionnaire, and then I'm going to send them for some labs. If they come with labs, some people will come, they just came from their doctor and they have labs. Of course, I'm going to review those and I'm going to send them for what I think I need in addition. I usually talk to my patients and we make a decision on what we think we want to move forward with. Not everybody's going to move forward with a ton of tests. Not everybody needs to. It just depends on the person. Some people are going to, from the person's story, I'm going to say, I think we should look at toxins first. Other people, I'm going to say, let's look at hormones. Let's look at cortisol. Let's look at the gut. If people come in and they say that they've got a ton of GI symptoms, I think I want to look at the gut, um, but that's not the only reason why we want to look at the gut. But there's a lot of things. So it just depends on that person. So
Right.
that's visit 1 is 90 minutes. We're sitting there, we're going back and forth about what kinds of symptoms you have and what kind of things we want to look at. And then we'll send you for the testing. And then they'll come back for a second visit, usually like 6 to 8 weeks later, depending on what we've ordered, right? Some of these tests take longer. When we do lab panels, if it's just a lab panel, they could come back in probably 3 to 4 weeks. And if it's a lab panel plus something else, like a saliva test or, a Dutch test or a stool test or toxins, some of them take a little longer because I have to order the test, they have to receive it, decide they're going to pick a day to do it, send it back, and then the lab has to process the test. So these types of tests are not covered by insurance, unfortunately. Some people will have some out-of-network benefits that will allow them to do these kinds of tests. Hopefully someday these tests will be covered by insurance. That's my hope. But they aren't covered by insurance. So it's one of those things that's a decision you have to make if you're going to want to do this kind of thing, that you're going to have to, devote a little bit of, finances towards that kind of thing, if that's the information you want to find. Second visit is we take all the information that we've gotten from these tests, depending on what we've ordered, and I'm going to review it all with you. I'm going to review it in detail. There's not usually a time that I call someone and say, everything's good. I don't do that. So, because usually there's something to talk about, right? So, when it comes to even vitamin and mineral levels, there's ranges. So even if somebody is within range, we can talk about where you are in the range. If you have a vitamin D, if your vitamin D is normal and it's 32 or 35, that to me that's not normal. The range for vitamin D goes from like 32 to like 100. I want you to be like 60 or 80. Most of my vitamins and minerals, I want you to be on that top third to quartile of that range. So if we have a range for, like, say, magnesium, and say it's between like 4 and 7, I want you to be closer to 6, so when I'm looking at things like that, I'm looking at optimal. I want you to be optimal. I don't want you to be just okay, right? And if something's not optimal, I'm going to want you to get there, and we have to figure out why you're not, and we got to potentially give you some supplements or figure out what's going on in other places that doesn't allow you to hold on to those vitamins and minerals. And I know you do a lot with the hair. There's a lot that has to do that happens with balance, right? So like if we have copper and zinc have to be
Mhm.
in balance with each other.
Right.
If we have too much of one and not enough of the other, we're going to be off.
Mhm.
There's a lot that has to do with, our adrenal glands can show up in some of the hair tissue testing,
Yeah.
once we know their adrenals, our thyroid, these imbalances are huge. And when our cortisol is not working properly or our adrenal glands aren't working properly, it's going to show us, and so these are things that we have to balance. And once we start balancing just in general, like whether it's the hormones, the minerals, the vitamins, our diet, we're going to start to improve the way we feel. We're going to start to feel a little bit better, a little less anxiety, a little less stress, a little better sleep, a little more hair on our heads, a little less hair on our
Not
face,
on our face.
right? So there's all these things that are going to help once we start to balance. Um,
And then, yeah, I mean, so a lot of times the people that I send you have done a hair test, and I feel like it's such a great compliment doing labs, of course, like always putting sometimes multiple, like you said before, we want to look at different things, blood showing us something, hair tissue mineral analysis showing us another.
mhm,
And like in the hair tissue mineral, it's really cool to correlate when you can kind of confirm, like, oh yeah, well, thyroid is, showing sluggish on a hair tissue mineral. And sometimes it correlates with the blood labs as well.
mhm.
Sometimes it's to what you said, when the minerals aren't balanced, we're
Yeah.
not getting the hormones into the cell.
Mhm.
So that's where, kind of looking at both these views and getting on the right nutrients, getting on the right nutrition
Yeah.
process. And it's just, building the fundamentals, building upon the good habits, the choosing the right foods, getting rid of the toxins in our personal care products and cleaning
Yep.
products.
Yep.
Because the toxins, also those overloads of them, can really affect our function and our hormones and our ability to create them and to absorb them into the
Yeah.
cells. But if somebody, so I think, people can really start, like, let's say somebody's really suffering with menopause, but they are not really thinking, and they may have other issues, but like they can really go to you and just say, hey, I want to do hormones, I want to do menopause treatment. And then you can see them and then make recommendations if you feel like they need further investigation, but at least start there.
Yeah. And there's some people like Hashimoto's, right? So when we're looking at autoimmune thyroid, there's a huge dietary gut component to that, really anything autoimmune. Some people, if I have someone change their diet and remove things like gluten and dairy, for some people, not all people, it is actually the sensitivity to those foods that's causing, it's called molecular mimicry, turns around and starts attacking the thyroid. And for some people, just making those changes is going to help to bring down their thyroid antibodies. Sometimes there's a lot more. Sometimes we got to look at, infections. Infections are huge. Sometimes I'm dealing with Lyme disease. I look at certain viruses. I'll look at Epstein-Barr. Lyme and Epstein-Barr are two very common triggers for autoimmunity and for sure for Hashimoto's. Um, so sometimes we need to go there. Sometimes we have to look at gut health, right? And if we have overgrowth of certain organisms in the gut, if we have a parasite, if we have overgrowth of bacteria, sometimes we'll have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And when there's something going on in the gut and we kind of work on that gut health, and diet is a huge piece of that too. A lot of people miss that part, that just because we're working on the gut, they think that we don't need to change something in the diet. Well, there's reasons why our gut is the way it is. And sometimes we have deficiencies in pancreatic enzymes, or we have a low stomach acid, or there's some inflammation inside our intestines. But sometimes, it's, well, what are you eating that's also contributing to that, right? So it all goes together. And I think, for each person, there's a different puzzle, right? And for each person, we have to kind of put those puzzle pieces together, and we take it one step at a time. And it could be sometimes as simple as 1 or 2 visits and they're starting to see changes. Other times it's gonna, I think we do see changes, and some people are a little sicker and have a little bit more going on. And it's like peeling the layers off of an onion, right? So sometimes we have to work a little harder and we have to dig a little deeper. But for the most part, with functional medicine, once you learn it, there's no going back, because you make so many positive changes, so many different changes for people, and you find out so much information, like the the lab tests that exist in functional medicine, we can do that one day if you want. We can just kind of pop up some
Yeah,
lab
I
tests.
definitely, what we'll do is we'll write down some like topics we want to have.
Sure. Yeah,
We'll just do one thing about thyroid, one thing about
sure.
functional testing or gut health.
Yeah,
All these topics are so important, but I'll
yeah.
say that, everybody that I send you, so I'm not going to mention any names because, we need their permission, but
Mhm.
one client I'm thinking of in particular that I sent to you within 3 weeks, like this was a woman, perimenopausal, early 40s, right? But she was suffering, she was struggling, and she really was seeking answers, going to this endocrinologist and this, nurse
Mhm.
practitioner and this
Yeah,
doctor over here, multiple tests, and actually got some really good testing, but didn't have the right, I guess, guidance with the testing. That's another
yeah,
part of it too, which we can talk about another time, but interpretation of these tests, right? So
yeah.
how often do you get labs and from the doctor and you're having a lot of symptoms and they say, "Oh, you're everything looks great." And they're
Right. What
looking
was
at it.
looked at, right? And even with cortisol, I think we've talked about this a
Yeah.
little bit before. Cortisol is something that fluctuates throughout the day, right? Every day. And
Mhm.
so if somebody goes in and they get their cortisol tested, say 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., but they don't get it tested because we're not going to the lab 4 times during the day, and the lab's not open at 12 between 10 and midnight. But if we can't look at all those numbers, we don't know just because someone's
Right.
numbers
The
normal in the
snapshot in time.
right.
Yeah.
And if somebody's number is normal and high in the morning, it doesn't mean that it's not low the rest of the day. So you kind of need to look at those pictures. And yes, interpretation is huge because
Yeah.
if I look at just TSHs all day long, thyroid stimulating hormone, a lot of people, a lot more people have a normal thyroid. And then when you're looking at everything, and then you do give somebody maybe natural thyroid, I usually use desiccated thyroid, NP thyroid, armor thyroid, or just giving them a thyroid support supplement. But if we start to do these things and working on cortisol and adrenals, those you're gonna see it in the numbers, but you're certainly gonna see it in the patient's concerns and complaints, right? Because if somebody says, "Oh my gosh, my hair stopped falling out,"
Mhm.
and and now I'm going to the bathroom every day. Like I don't have constipation and um I'm starting to be able to lose weight or whatever the thing is. Like if we don't look at those things, we're going to miss it, you know? I feel like we miss so much because the way, I think our system is broken. I mean, I know our system is broken because I've worked in it for 26 1 to 30 years. We have a broken system. If we can only talk to a person for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, how much can we really find out? Not enough.
Mhm.
And we're in this mode of like go 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 because that's the way it's set up with the insurance companies and the way it is, and it's so broken that then we're all broken, right? All the people are broken because nobody can help them to fix it
Mhm.
because we don't have time because we're limited because we see 30 patients in a day or whatever it is, and so
Well,
uh,
I want to finish the client that I'm talking about and your patient, I mean, within so she was been on this the last year trying to figure out what the
yeah.
heck is going on without getting any answers, getting really frustrated because she wasn't seeing like anything change. And one visit with you, and maybe she had a follow-up already, I don't even know, but in 3 weeks, she actually released 11 pounds. She could not lose 1 pound. And it was only because you adjusted her thyroid, like she needed thyroid support, right? And she wasn't getting the right guidance. So that coupled with some supplements that
Mhm.
you recommended she implement.
Probably a little bit adrenal. I think maybe some
And
progesterone
yeah, and like, oh my
for
God, I talked to her like 11 days after, or I'm sorry, 3 weeks after you talked to her, and she's like, I've already lost 11 pounds. I'm sleeping better and I have more energy.
that's amazing.
And like, you really didn't even dive deeper than just looking at the labs she had, and she did have a Dutch test, but
Mhm.
and that's just one story and one example. There's tons. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you get frustrated. I mean, so if people are listening to this or know anybody that's like dealing with anxiety, it's not normal to not sleep. I mean, it's very common, but it's not normal. So once learn about fundamentals of like your sleep, getting out in the sun, making sure you're blocking blue light at night, doing all the sleep hygiene that you can do, and then supporting those adrenals, and usually are the case, right? I mean, this it can be life changing because now all of a sudden you're not cranky all the time because you're actually
Yeah,
rested.
right.
But thyroid is such another, I can't tell you how many people when I was working at the wellness center and people would come in for weight loss and they literally this came out of probably 7 to 9 people out of 10's mouth. When they sit down, they'd say, well, I'm struggling with weight, this 20 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, but I
Mhm.
know it's not my sugar and I know it's not my thyroid. And I was like, oh, how do you know? My doctor's tested me. And then I'm like, asked for the labs to see them.
Yeah, I don't trust that. Whenever
Literally,
somebody tells me, I
there
know
was
it's not blank because blank.
TSH was
See.
tested and T4. And
Yeah.
that's it. And I'm like, wow, that's like so interesting that the doctor can diagnose you with not having any thyroid problems based on a pituitary gland hormone. And again, to your point, like TSH is going to be elevated in somebody severely hypothyroid, but sometimes not. I mean, yeah. So
First, I want to look at T3,
hey,
and I think a lot of people, I mean, we can, like I said, we're gonna probably gonna have to have a few days where we talk
yeah,
about different things, but our thyroid, our T4, right? T4 is our stored thyroid hormone, right? It's, when we talk, some things are pituitary, some things are in the thyroid, but T4 is our stored thyroid hormone, and T3 is our active. And if we don't look at T3, we don't know that the person's got active hormone in their body that's like giving them that energy, right? So we give people, in mainstream medicine, we give a lot of synthroid, a lot of levothyroxine, and it's not a wrong decision to give somebody levothyroxine, but if you give, or which is synthroid, if you give somebody synthroid or levothyroxine and they're not feeling better, right? And they're still having fatigue and they're still having hair loss and they're still having night sweats and all these things, inability to lose weight, then we have to think that there's a conversion issue, right? Because we're expecting that body to see this synthetic hormone and convert it to the active form, right? And if their body doesn't do that, if we're not looking, we don't know. I mean, we kind of do know if the person tells us they still have all the symptoms, but I think people are just always, in mainstream side, we're relying on those numbers, right? Just because the TSH is now normal doesn't mean the person feels normal. And I think that if we just look at the numbers and we don't look at the person, we're missing half the story. And so, I just think that there's so
well,
much, what,
there is a lot. And to your point though, like the typical thyroid treatment in conventional medicine is T4, right? A synthetic T4.
synthroid, yeah, levothyroxine,
And
Luvoxin, yeah.
I heard a seminar on a thyroid fixer seminar with endocrinologists, and the statistic was something like 2% of people actually feel benefits or get benefits from just straight up T4, where a lot of people need other support. So there's a lot to talk about with thyroid, but I think we'll stop because we can go on and on. Probably Noelle and I can
We could talk for hours
all
probably.
day long.
And then everybody's gonna get confused. We're
Narrow
gonna say
down
too
like
much.
some topics, and then when I send out, invite people to it, then they can come on if they really feel like they want to dive deeper. And then
Or,
if they want to come see you, they go on your website.
yeah, so finallyfunctionalmedicine.com. ffmedicine.com is probably an easier way to find it. So I do have a website. You can contact me there. I also have a phone number, 732-391-1157, or Noel at finallyfunctionalmedicine.com. A
Yeah,
lot of times,
I'll leave that on the bottom too. So I'll
yeah.
link to it.
Um, and we can get you in for virtual or in-person visits. If some people live farther away, then we can certainly do virtual visits, in-person visits if people want to, be there face to face. And then, depending, usually hour, like I said, hour and a half first visit, hour and a half second visit. And then usually I try to keep the follow-ups after the first and second visit to about an hour. And, I do menopause visits if somebody just wants to deal with menopause, but I do find a lot of times, sometimes it's as simple as just menopause and we get people on hormones and thyroid, or if not, not necessarily thyroid, but get their hormones balanced and they feel better. But once we start wanting to dig into these functional medicine tests, it becomes more of a, functional medicine visit. So I do those. And even for the younger population, I can do a PCOS, PMS, hormone balance kind of visit. That sometimes we do need to dig deeper, but sometimes it could be just on the surface. Let's get these hormones figured out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Noelle. This was great. I always love talking to you, so
You're welcome.
I
Thanks for
appreciate it. All right,
if
everybody.
anybody has any things they want to hear about, definitely we can try to schedule some talks about, more
I
specific.
will. Yeah, I'm
Maybe
gonna
we
get
kind
some.
of were a little all over the place with things
Yeah,
today. There's so much.
definitely. No, no, no. I'll get more feedback and see more specifically what people want to talk about. But I think, you gave a great, kind of overall hormones and thyroid and digging into a little bit more possible infections and mold toxicity and things
Yeah,
of that
that's a
nature.
whole other can of worms,
Oh
and
yeah,
we
we
can
can
have
talk
one
about
whole
that.
day on
That's
that.
a huge,
That's
huge problem.
yeah.
But thank you so much, Noelle, and thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you. See you.